So if shapes are congruent, they are the same shape and size. Now, it's pretty easy actually to identify shapes that are congruent. A and B, yeah, they're congruent, they're the same shape and size, except for the little spouts actually on the watering can, so actually they're not the same shape and size. A and D are, they're identical in shape. C is also, right, it's a different color, but that doesn't matter. Now, B and E are congruent as well, because they don't have little things coming out of their can. Now, in this exercise here, just pause the recording for a second, just see if you can work out which of the following figures are congruent. So you can see that A and D are congruent. There's nothing congruent to B. C and O are congruent. This is a rotation of C, but it's still congruent. There's nothing congruent to E as far as I can see. F, there's nothing congruent to F, but there is something similar to F, and that is G. Okay, G is an enlargement of F, therefore it's similar, but it's not congruent. H, nothing similar to H. I, well, L and I are similar. This is a rotation. They are the same size, so they are congruent. Nothing similar to J. K, there's no circle, the same shape and size as K, so there's nothing congruent to K. N is similar but not congruent, and so on. Okay. Now, here's some pairs of congruent figures. Okay, so we know they're the same shape and size, that's given, we don't need to prove that. And it says, identify the side in the second figure corresponding to the side in the first figure. So, for example, if we look at side CB in 3A here, CB is the sloping side, I guess you could describe that as, and you can see it corresponds to SR. Okay, so when we're looking for corresponding sides, we're looking for sides that are in the same place on the other shape. Let's do another example. So if you look at 3B here, AB is the shortest side, and therefore it is corresponding to ON on its congruent shape there. So it's pretty easy to identify corresponding sides. You just have to identify, look for things like length. We used length in 3B here, and we used angles in 3A. We said that there was an obtuse angle at one end of the side, namely at C and at S, and there's an acute angle at the other end, B and at R. Okay, so you can use length or you can use angles to identify congruent sides. Down in F, actually, 3F is a little bit more difficult. Now, if these shapes are congruent, then we have to imagine rotating the second shape around, so that point P would be rotated around to be underneath D there. Imagine taking this shape and rotating it about 180 degrees so that P and D are lined up. Well, in that case, O would be corresponding to point A, because O is going to move around like this, and M would be underneath O, so M would be corresponding to C. So if we're looking for a side, say, corresponding to CD, okay, that would be MP, because P corresponds to D and M would correspond to C once we rotate that shape around. Let's say we wanted the side OP. What side corresponds with OP? Once you've rotated this shape around, it would be AD. Okay? And we've also got to identify angles in the second figure corresponding to ABC in the first figure. So there's ABC, it's an acute angle in 3A, and that would be the same as QRS. Okay, so that's also not too hard to do. Let's look at 3F again. ABC would be the same as MNO. Okay, the angle ABC is the angle made at A if you draw a line from A to B to C. Sorry, it's the angle at B, rather, if you draw a line from A to B to C. So from A to B to C, the angle there would be that. And if we go from O and M, that angle in there would be corresponding to angle ABC.